So now I'll be explaining some basic terms which we have here. So we actually have three very basic terms which you would always hear, and as a beginner in MongoDB you must know these terms. First is the collection, then documents, then fields and values. So I'll be explaining them one by one. So what are collections? So in MongoDB, a collection is a grouping of MongoDB documents. So it's similar to a table in traditional databases, and it actually gives more flexibility in MongoDB. So collections are not bound by a rigid schema, meaning each document within a collection can have different structure. So as you know that MongoDB has very much flexibility, so you don't need to define any kind of format. That means my collection would only be having username, email, password, nothing more can be added, or nothing can less can be added. So in MongoDB it's not like that. You can add any extra fields or very less fields, it's totally up to you, right? So an example of collection is, imagine you are managing a bookstore. So in MongoDB you might have a collection named books. Similarly, you might have a name of collection named as users, and different collections, right? So collection contains multiple documents. That means, for example, if I have a social media platform, my collection would be collection of user profiles. Similarly, in a bookstore, my collection would be collection of all books, like that. Okay, so each representing a book, and every book document can have various fields such as title, author, genre, publish, year, and more. So you can add more field to it later on or less field to it, there won't be any issue, right? So now let's continue with the next definition, that is documents. So a document in MongoDB is a record stored in a collection. So collection is what you can consider collection as an array, and what is a document is just an object, right? So that's the difference. So it's a set of key value pairs similar to a JSON object, where the values can be defined in different data types like string, numbers, arrays, and other documents, etc. So documents are the basic unit of data storage in MongoDB. So in MongoDB, documents are stored in BSON format, which is a binary JSON. Okay, so here you can see, here is an example of the object which we call as document, and we have previously seen this. So now let's continue. Now guys, what are fields and values? So fields in MongoDB are keys or identifiers. So here actually you can see that on the left side, ID, title, author, these are the keys, right? So we actually call them field, right? And what is on the right side, that is the value. So these are the values, right? So our keys are the keys or identifiers within a document that hold specific values. Each field has a corresponding value, so we actually call them key value pair. You can consider field as key and the value is the value, right, which can be of various data types: string, number, array, or different data types, right? So example of fields and values in the above books collection, you can see that title, author, genre, publish year, ratings, and reviews are actually the fields. You can see they are actually the fields. You can see these are the fields, that is keys, right? And their respective values are these values. So you can see on the right side there we actually have the values. So these are the values, right? Now their respective values are these. Each field holds specific information about the book, such as title, author, genre, publication year, ratings given by readers, and reviewers left by users. Okay, so the flexibility of MongoDB allows different documents within the same collection to have different fields, making it easy to adapt for evolving data structures and needs. So you can see that we have only one object here, but similar to this we can have another objects also, we can have another books also. So their structure might be different also, their values, key value pairs might be different also. So don't be surprised with that, because MongoDB actually allows that very easily, right? So in other documents, in other books, you might have different kind of key value pairs. You might not have a title, you might not have an author, so you can actually skip those, or you can add extra fields to those objects, right? So very easy. Now let's continue. And what is the difference between BSON and JSON? So you can see that's the difference. So BSON is actually, you can see that I actually wrote this code in JSON format, and similar to this is the BSON format of the same code. So you can see, yeah, pretty much like a little bit readable. You can see that, yeah, it's a little bit readable, but still we can consider BSON as similar to JSON. Like JSON format, when converted into binary data, is actually the BSON format, right? So that's the difference, and rest the meaning is this only. Okay, so if I talk about BSON, the meaning is this only, it's just that it's machine readable, right? BSON format, right? So now let's continue with our next definition, that is SQL versus NoSQL. So in short, SQL has a structured fixed schema and tables. For example, you only have three fields, for example username, email, password. So this is actually a fixed schema. It means you can't add a second name or you can't add any extra thing. That's known as a fixed schema. Okay, and later on if you want to add some extra fields, so you have to actually add a complete column, because in table row format, row column format, you actually have to add a complete format. For example second name, for example gender, for example job role, like that. Okay, so you might have to add a complete column, and not everyone has a job role, not everyone wants to disclose their gender. So like that MongoDB is better, because you can skip those fields, but in SQL you have to pass null values at least to actually show some data on there. Okay, so that's the problem with normal SQL. That means you actually have to, if you don't know what's the job role, or if you don't want to disclose the job role, suppose someone didn't mention their job role, someone didn't mention their phone number, what to do with that case? So you have to pass null values in normal SQL, but in MongoDB you don't need to pass anything. You can just skip that key value pair, just remove that. Okay, so very easy. Now SQL stands for structured query language. It has a rigid schema requiring predefined structure. That means you have to predefine the structure. Later on you can add the value. Then SQL relies on relationships, that is joins between tables. So in SQL we have a term named as joins, that comes in RDBMS, that is relational database. You might have learned database, or if you don't know database you can skip this part, but yeah, it is based on relationships, right? And then SQL is actually traditionally scaled vertically. That means you can't actually add more servers, but yeah, you can add more fields to the database easily. Okay, so the problem with this is if one server goes down, then your uh, it's a very big problem in SQL, right? So there are some properties also, ACID properties. So SQL follows ACID properties, that is atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. This comes under the DBMS. If you don't know this, totally skip this, right? Then we have suitable for structured data with complex relationships. So if you have a mandatory requirement of a structured data only, that you then you can easily go for SQL. Okay, so some example of SQL is MySQL, PostgreSQL, Oracle, right? Then we talk about NoSQL. So NoSQL has flexible schema. That means if you don't want to disclose your phone number, you can directly remove the field. Instead of passing null values, you can just erase the field, right? So it often uses collections and documents. Then it has varied kind of data. Some NoSQL databases have their query language. Then we have flexible schema, so it allows dynamic data structure. That means you have flexible schema. Again, you can store any kind of data. Then we have often denormalized data to avoid complex joins. Okay, denormalize again simply means the same, that is you can just store in any form of data, right? Then it's horizontally scalable. That means you can add as many servers as you can, so if one goes down, at least the backup is there. Then we have non always compliant of ACID properties. So NoSQL not always complies with ACID properties. Some provide eventual consistency. Okay, so if you know ACID, that's fine. If you don't know, you can skip this. Okay, then we have ideal for unstructured rapidly changing data. For example, you have a social media platform, and in future you want to add multiple features which would require multiple fields. Later on, for example, I use Instagram or any social media platform. Nowadays they ask for email, phone number, and sometimes government IDs also. So if in future you have multiple features which would require additional details, so there won't be any problem in NoSQL, because it allows flexible schema. Okay, you don't need to predefine anything on your table or pass null values. You can just add new values as per your choice anytime you want. Okay, then we have some examples of NoSQL, that is MongoDB, Cassandra, Redis, DynamoDB, right? So yeah, you might be using MongoDB mostly, but yeah, in future you might also learn DynamoDB, that's made by Amazon. So yeah, you can learn that also, but yeah, MongoDB is very important, right? That's what we are going to learn. Now guys, after this is a short example how exactly this looks. So here you can see that what is this. This is actually the table format that comes in the SQL category, that is MySQL. You can see this is the table format, and if I talk about NoSQL, that is MongoDB, this is the document format which MongoDB follows. So here's the same kind of data, but you can see the difference. So if the country field is not available here, then it would be still valid, but here if the country field is not available, rest all fields in the country are available. For example, Canada, Australia, UK are available, but this USA is not available. So you have to pass something here. You can't leave it empty. You have to pass null or something here. Okay, so in MongoDB, if the whole field is erased from here but others are there, then that's totally fine. But if whole field is erased from here, others are there, but it's not fine, because you have to pass at least one thing, that is null or some empty value, right? So if you don't know what is the country, you have to pass some empty value here, right? So that's the problem with normal SQL. Okay guys, so I hope you understood a basic introduction of MongoDB. Now I'll be explaining some working of MongoDB. Okay, how exactly it works with our merge stack. So let's begin. So guys, if I give you an example of a social media platform, that would be the best example. So suppose you have a web page. Okay, suppose you have a web page. You can take an example of mobile app also, but I would be going with a web page. Okay, so I hope everyone has used platforms like Instagram or Facebook. If not, then please try to use that. Okay, it's a very good social media platform, and I think everyone uses social media platforms, so it's not something which I must tell again and again, right? So yeah, this is suppose the website page, very basic website page. So you can consider that this is the profile page. Okay, so I would just talk about the profile page. So profile page. Okay, so this is suppose the profile page, and this is suppose the user profile picture. This is the username, so I would just say suppose this is the username which is written. Okay, suppose this is the username, and then there is some description. You might have given some caption or description, whatever you call it. Then we have some posts, right? Some posts of the users. So this is some kind of data. Where is this data coming from? Where does this data come from? So what actually happens is initially this page is empty. Your profile page is actually empty. Okay, your profile page is actually empty, no data. Later on, when data comes, data is it looks like this. Okay, but what actually happens is, let me just give you an example. What actually happens is this is your front end, right? This is your FT. I would just write FT here. So this is your front end, right? What would happen is, front end would request data of user whose name starts with Harshal, right? So in my backend, so I would just design my backend here. Okay, I hope you know some basics of backend. You know what is the backend, and we have taught Node.js also. You can watch videos of Node.js to know what's exactly a backend. So this is suppose my server where my backend is running, right? And here what would happen? An API would be called, searching for this user. Okay, searching for Harshal. Okay, searching for Harshal in my backend. This API is called. Okay, so I would just say this API is called in my backend. What would happen? So my backend does not contain any data. My backend does not contain any data. This would be actually sent to my database. Okay, so this would be actually sent to my database. So my database is actually available here, right? My database is actually available here, and yeah, a database actually looks like this. You can just assume that this is the diagram of a database. Okay, so this is my database available, which is written in MongoDB, which is in MongoDB. Okay, so yeah, here what would happen? Harshal would be found, data of Harshal would be found. Okay, so some data which is in JSON format, okay, would come here, right? JSON format would come here, and it would be sent to my backend. Okay, it would be sent to my backend, right? So data would come and sent to my backend. Now this backend would again send this, make some verification, either it's your data or somebody else's data. Backend would handle those things. You might add different logics later on, but right now you have assumed that yeah, I would just send this data. So what would happen? Front end would request the data from backend. Backend would request the data from database. Then database would look for that data and return that data to backend. Backend would at the end return the complete object. Complete object. Okay. Once the complete object is here, it would be sent to this. Okay, so finally your data would be visible like this. Okay, so that's how exactly MongoDB works here. MongoDB has some different operations like create, read, update, delete, where you can create the data, where you can read the data. That means you can find a data, you can view that document, you can send that document. Then there's the update document. Suppose you want to update the password or you want to update the username, then that's the update method. Then we have a delete method when you want to delete a user profile or delete some document like that. Okay, so I'm just giving you an example of user, but yeah, you can do it for books or any kind of data which you want to store into the database. Okay, and obviously your database might not be just storing users. It might also, for example, it's storing data of users. It's also storing data of books also, for example. Okay, books also. It's also storing data of products. Okay, products like that. Okay, so different kind of data can exist all together in the form of collections. These three are what? These three are collections. These three are collections are stored together in a single database. Can happen very easily in MongoDB, right? So guys, I hope you understood how exactly MongoDB helps you connect with that. So this was your front end. Your front end would be in React.js. Okay, so let me just write here. So your front end would be actually, suppose, in React JS, right? And your backend is in Node.js, and your database is actually in MongoDB, right? So Node.js and Express. Okay, Express would also be counted in the backend itself because you use Node.js and Express.js together, right? So yeah, that's how exactly merge stack works, and that's the major role of MongoDB, which acts as our database and would actually search the value, add the value, read the value, update the value, delete the value for you whenever you want. And yeah, definitely you need some kind of verification, which we'll do that later on. We'd verify the user, then send them the data. We verify the tokens which we create in Node.js, then send them the data accordingly. Okay guys, so I hope you understood one thing, that is how exactly works. And one more doubt here is, why do we need a backend? Can't we just directly request the data from database? So if you found that answer, that's great, but let me just explain why do we actually need a backend. Okay, so suppose again, this is your website. Okay, this is your simple website, right? This is your website, and this is I'm just going to draw my database, right? I'm just going to draw my database like this. So this is my database, and I'm just saying, suppose if I want to request data directly from this, what can actually happen is, I can read the data. It's fine. Yeah, you can read the data. There is no security issue. Suppose there is some security issue, but you are not reading a very critical data. But when it comes to update, it's very less secure. If you directly try to update things from front end to database, what would happen? Any hacker can easily update your password. They don't have any kind of restriction, because database is not itself that much secure. It does not have that much restrictions, not that much security rules. So that's why we need some kind of wall in between. Okay, that wall is actually our backend. Okay, so backend would verify the user who is requesting the data, who wants to read the data, who wants to update the data. If that user is verified, then the data is requested. If that user is not verified, then obviously the request is sent back with the false response. Okay, so that's how things work actually. Later on, when you integrate the complete merge stack, you'll understand more about this, but that's a short overview why you exactly need a backend in between to connect your front end to database. Okay, so backend is the mediator which acts as a security layer, a very big security layer for the verification and for different kind of logics with different kind of operations. Okay, so whatever is, for example, you want to search some user in MongoDB, so you would be writing your search operation here. Okay, in your database, in your sorry, you'd be writing your search operation in your backend. Okay, here you would be writing your search operations. Your code, your database code here would be written. Okay, later on your queries would be sent to database, and then the result would be sent back to backend and then to front end. Okay, so guys, I hope you understood this video. We covered a very basic introduction of MongoDB, then we also covered how it exactly works. Now in the next video we are going to cover the complete installation part of MongoDB. So it requires some basic things like MongoDB Atlas and Compass. What are these? So MongoDB Atlas is actually something which would allow you to use database in cloud. That means you don't need to download anything. You would just get a link from MongoDB, and then you would be easily able to store data on their website, okay, official website. You don't need to have or purchase any kind of database. You have their official website of MongoDB. We have some free tier also, we have some paid version also, so we'll see that both of them also, okay, but we would be using the free version obviously. But yeah, if you want to store more data, obviously you would be needing paid version, but in this specific course free version is enough, and if you are building normal projects, free version is enough, right? So MongoDB Atlas is actually a cloud database. That means you don't need any kind of storage. You have online MongoDB website where you store your data, right? And what is MongoDB Compass? MongoDB Compass is your local you can say MongoDB software which you download on your computer, and you use it to access your database locally. That means you have a local database in your hard disk of your computer, and you can actually access it using MongoDB Compass. So both of these are very important, and we would be using them in the upcoming video. Okay, so I hope you understood this, and I will see you in the next one with the installation part. Till then, see you, have a good day. Bye bye.